Welcome to the Bahamas Beauty Trades podcast, where we will be having one beautiful conversation at a time. How did it all begin? For me, it started right around 1986. I was about 13 years old, and it was a time when I would consider myself to be immature, ignorant of so many things. But one thing that I had then, I was excited about learning something new. I didn't have a lot of experiences, even as a youngster, going to barbershops. But I must say that I gained the confidence, and I started out with a sense of comfort with the machine always being around, because my father, he stopped going to the barbershop a very long time ago. A very interesting story. I wouldn't take you down that trail, but he stopped going to the barbershop, and the machine was always in the house. He started to trim himself, and I saw him doing it when I was growing up through the years. And Vernon McFall was definitely pivotal in creating the type of environment where I wasn't scolded for handling the machine, and I wasn't scolded for experimenting on myself. So I think that my beginnings were pretty unusual for that time, 1986. So who was the first person that I trimmed? Well, I didn't have a lot of friends to experiment on, but I trimmed myself. Maybe because that is what I saw around me. I saw my dad always trimming himself. So the obvious conclusion was to give myself a haircut. So that's what I did. A machine was always there, so I took the machine and I began experimenting. I was in our old bathroom. It was hot, like most of us know, having no air condition and the lights and a small space. But I was surprised because I thought I did a very good job, because I went to school and I asked a friend of mine, Anderson, how my hair look? And he said, it looks okay. So I went home that day and I really scrutinized it. I looked at it with two mirrors, if you know how to use it, and it was botched. It was messed right up. And I said, oh, Anderson, to myself, of course. I said, you're a real good friend. He didn't tell me the truth, but I guess he didn't want to hurt my feelings. So yes, I started trimming myself, and for a long time, I only trimmed myself. Did I go to barber school? I did not go to barber school initially. I started out like so many of the barbers in the Bahamas, being self-taught. Particularly now, remember, this is 1986. So in 1986, I think YouTube came out in February 14th, 2005. So this is 1986 now. So we didn't have Pinterest and Instagram and all these other shows and videos that would show you how to execute certain techniques. Nor we didn't have YouTube. So we, particularly me, I can speak specific to me, I did a lot of experimenting on myself. So today, I'm almost envious because they have so many great YouTubers, very good barbers, world renowned, that's out there, that's showing you all the tips and tricks. So it is so good to begin as a barber today compared to when I got started. This is not to say that you shouldn't go to school, but that's my journey, my experience that I had. So no, I didn't start it out in my career. In fact, I worked for about about 10 years before I went to beauty school. Let me give you a brief synopsis as to my journey as a barber. I started out, as I said before, trimming myself in I think it was 86, as I said, yes. I started out working at a place called Clippers Tricks. I was introduced to the owner by a friend of mine, Daron McKinsey. He was a very nice guy, still is. I appreciate him giving me the opportunity to meet Anthony Evans rather. He owned the store Clippers Tricks, and I started out there, and it was an interesting experience. I learned a lot of slight business skills, not so much because I was strictly paid on commission based. Okay, so I learned a few things there. I moved from there to a barbershop called Champion's Barbershop, 1994, Peterson James. I had some amazing experience, and when I mean amazing, I don't mean amazing in all of its grandeur, but it was a very character building time, and that was what I liked about it. From there, I stayed there 1992 to 94. No, I stayed there for 1 year. I stayed there from 1994 to 95. 95, I went to Joey's Personal Touch. Miss Joey Paul. I learned some very interesting things there from a business perspective and from a legal perspective too. From there, I moved to my own store, Roots Cutting Edge, 1996. I think it was in the month of December. What's going on with my memory? December. It was a beautiful transition. I was young, 22 years old, still not fully trained, but I had sufficient in order to galvanize the type of support and clientele that I had. And from there, I went off to beauty school, and I was this beauty school at a school called Benes International School of Beauty, Newport Richey. A wonderful experience. And I studied barber stylist. That's a different type of degree. You had two. You had a regular barber, and then you had barber stylist, and that is what I studied. And I returned to Nassau in 2004, and from there I went to a store called Paul's Barbershop. Yes, I was there for about 6 years this time. The owner at that time was Denise Watson Paul. And from there, I opened up my store again, and I called it Asa Beauty Center. That was a very interesting milestone of mine in 2010. And I grew, and I'm still here, 2010 to 2024. And I went off to school again, but I did it locally. I did some studies at a school called Miracle University in Virginia, Martinsville, Virginia. I went there traveling back and forward, and I also schooled at a local school here as well, where I got my master's and then I got my doctoral in barbering at a school called FOB, Faces of Beauty. The full name is Faces of Beauty, Cosmetology and Workforce Training, yes. I had a wonderful time there, and I continued to involve myself in learning, and I constantly think that it's imperative to invest in yourself. So I encourage anyone, invest in your development at all levels, from an informal level, also from a formal level. Invest in your development. So what was the reason for me going off to beauty school? I had 4 basic reasons for why I thought investing in my education was important. First of all, I didn't feel as if that I was adequate as a barber. So my inadequacy was the fuel for me to desire and to aspire for understanding more about what I did, and also to bring professional and personal fulfillment in what I did. So I think that you can work from your understanding and work from who you are. The more prepared and equipped you are, I think the better it is for you to really fulfill your potential. And I also recognize, my second reason was I recognized that I had to level up my skills because of the competition. The Caribbean, they were starting to come to the Bahamas, and the competition was that condition or those circumstances that made me have the grit to say I am going to compete and I'm going to be successful at what I do. So the best way in my mind is to go and to get exposed. So that was another reason. I also did it, interestingly, for my children, even though at that time I didn't have any. But what I wanted to say to them is whatever field that you desire to go into, maximize and carry it to the very extent of the limit that you could financially afford, and that your mental capacity and your skills could take as far as it could take you. And I wanted to teach them that lesson through my example. And finally, I wanted to prepare myself to be an instructor because I was always fascinated with being an educator. I wanted to educate others. I wanted to be a part of that link for someone that's desiring more of themselves because they are tired of their carefully constructed reality and they want more. So you have to deconstruct that. And education, experience, whether that is formally or informally, is the way to go. For me, the sacrifice that I made was, it could be big for some, for others it may not have been that large and huge. But for me, what I decided to do, I was working in the field for 10 years and I recognized these gaps and these inadequacies that I had. So I decided to shut down my business that I had for, I think, about 6 years at the time, and to go off to school. And while I was working, my career at this time, from moving from place to place, I was working for about 10 years before I went off to beauty school. So I decided to take the resources that I accumulated over the years. I was kind of frugal. I didn't spend lavishly or anything like that. And that is how I financed my school. So that was a small sacrifice for me. And I would do it again. I recognized that I had some challenges from an educational point of view. I didn't have the type of financing or the type of support, financial support. And I also recognized that I didn't have any scholarship through athleticism. So all these different things that could be considered difficulties, but I looked at it from a pragmatic point of view where I had the resources and I had the discipline to save. So that is what I use. And this story is not unique. You had so many people that went through the exact same route that I went through. And you may need to go through that route. Travel the journey. There's beauty in the struggle. So this is another question, and this question is, what are some of the lessons that I learned when I went off to school? When I went to school, I learned something that a lot of people didn't tell me. I'm sure many would have experienced it, but I didn't have that type of mentorship, so I had to learn through intuition and had to be guided by my faith and by my relationship with my Creator. And I learned that you have to leave a place that's comfortable to achieve uncommon growth. So what was comfortable for me was I was doing pretty well. My business was growing pretty well. I was very familiar with where I lived. But because I didn't want to have that regular type of advancement, so I decided to get uncomfortable. It's like being in a pot. When you are in a potted plant, in most instances, a tree would never reach its potential while it's in that pot. It has to be planted in somewhere that's strange and different. And I also learned through the process of going to school that timing could be such a powerful asset. Of course, it could be a liability to others as well. But I realized timing was such a beautiful lesson for me. I met 3 people that I would have never encountered if I stayed in New Providence. There was this lady called Johnson. The first night I went to school, I met her. I didn't have an easy route to get home. I was about to call the taxi from the school's head office, and she was there, and she gave me a ride home. The second night, I was there with my classmate, Brian Roebuck. He gave me my second ride home. And while I was at school my third night, Evelyn Sheck, she gave me not only my third ride home that night, but she was my ride until I was able to get myself a vehicle in beauty school in Newport Richey. And I say timing because if I had gone to school 4 months earlier, 3 months earlier, I would have not met these people there. I would have never seen them. We may have never bucked paths. And I believe that other people would have been able to help me as I help others at the same time. But this timing is such a powerful asset, and we need not to use procrastination to stop us from achieving and growing and receiving uncommon growth. Another thing that I recognize is to don't believe people who say that things can't be done if they haven't made a journey for themselves. Don't allow them to be stumbling blocks for you. You need to rely on your own faith, intuition, motivation, aspiration, inspiration, and encounter these things for yourself. Because I think that's the way that you're going to have your own unique journey, your own unique narrative. The question is, how difficult was it for me to find work after school, after coming back from beauty school in 2004? In my view, it wasn't that difficult, because difficulty is only because you lack the experience and knowledge. And you don't have to go through your own experiences, and you don't have to be limited by your own knowledge once you have the knowledge and experience. So what I did, I accumulated the numbers from my clients before I went to school. So that was like, a plan, not really a plan B, but it was a reserve that I was able to rely on, those connections that I made before. And what I did when I returned, we had the physical yellow pages, not like today with all of the digital yellow pages. I went and I called every single store in that business. Some stores I called twice, just putting my requests out there, finding out if they needed barbers. And I did that, and I ended up resolving on Paul's Barbershop. That was my route. You can have a different route. Today you have so many different opportunities. Take advantage of these opportunities. So don't look at these things as being insurmountable. You can surmount them. Invest in your development. Don't stop. Don't give in. Don't give up. Invest in your development as a barber. Invest in your development. If you have to pay for it yourself, do it. If you have to invest in books, invest in watching and learning, continue to invest in your development. And don't think for a minute that it is useless or it is costly. No, pay that price. Pay that price and stop coming up with excuses to satisfy your ego. And I guess I don't want to say that you're lazy, but make that investment for your future, because you have to put the hard work in. That's the way that you're going to really develop and achieve greatness and achieve the things that's beyond your reality right now. I never regretted making that investment. And I don't believe that you will either. This is TEB from the Bahamas Beauty Trades Podcast, signing out.